It looks like waking up in the morning, going to pump and just sobbing. Mm. That's what it looks like. It looks like being on your couch before the world's eyes are open, having anxiety that your kid's going to wake up before you pump, and then not being able to fill that bottle because you have such anxiety that you're not producing enough because you're so anxious that your kid's going to wake up before you pump the bottle, and it's a cycle. It looks like crying on the floor because you have been locked into a house in COVID and you won't let yourself out because you're too afraid you're going to hurt your child. It looks like, you know, the dog tracking in mud on the carpet and you're down on your hands and knees, not fully healed from a surgery, trying to scrub it out with anything you have, because that one white carpet that you have, you're fixated on saving it because it's the one thing that clung to who you used to be, and you're changing so much that you don't know who you are. It's being desperate to go out with friends, but then every time you go out with them, you're just sobbing and crying because you're so happy to have someone to see that understands you. It's wanting so bad to just sit down and hold your baby and just love that baby, but being so overwhelmed by all the other tasks around you and feeling like you have to be the perfect mom and get it all done that you literally are paralyzed and can't do anything without help. But you're too afraid to ask for help because you don't want to look like a mom that doesn't have it together. That's what it looks like. It looks like flipping out over seemingly small things because those are the only things that you can control, because that's all you have that is stable at a time where everything is changing, and other factors really make a big difference. Like if you have an issue with housing, if you have a major issue of a major loss, if you have an issue with finances, all of those can contribute to, I mean, there was a good year where I had really happy moments holding my son and going out with my son and doing things with my son, and his little smile made my day. He was the reason that I was able to keep going. But I can tell you for a solid year straight, there wasn't a day that I woke up and didn't cry or had a mental breakdown and cried by 2 or 3 in the afternoon. And that was an entire year that I just didn't even know who I was. And I guess the thing that I wish the most is that society would change their expectations of mothers so that, and normalize asking for help when you have something like this, so that, you know, that first year, I wish my son would know everything about him. You know, I was so happy to have him. He made things brighter, but the world at the time was so dark that it was really hard to see at all. And I think that there are a lot of moms that will describe postpartum depression and anxiety as the dark cloud. And they remember when the cloud lifted. I remember when my cloud lifted. I remember the day. I remember.
Was it one thing that happened, or was it just unexplicable? Like you woke up one day and you just felt lighter. What was the turning point itself?
I had to rebuild my faith in myself. I had to rebuild my confidence in my husband, in myself, in my family. My confidence was lost by the fact that I couldn't get a job, that I had lost some friends, that I had lost our housing, that I felt like I was losing as a mother because everyone was telling me a different thing and I didn't know what the right thing was. And finally, you know, through therapy, I was able to get to a point where I found bright lights to hang on to enough that I rebuilt my confidence back to say no. And eventually I just learned to shut out the noise and say, you know, no, this quote I've clung to is be who you are, not who the world wants you to be. And being able to get out and cling to that quote really was what started to bring me back. We wound up, I got a fantastic job that was, you know, in a different field. We moved to a new location. We started new habits with our family and started a fresh life with all the resources that we needed. That was when I really started to heal. But that was just the start.
Right. It's never something that is just going to be erased from your reality, right? It's a part of your story. It's a part of who you are. And it's not something that I think that you would just pretend didn't happen, right? Like it's something that is going to be very real and very present for you. And I appreciate you acknowledging that too, because it's sort of, I hope this doesn't sound insensitive, but it's sort of like when you have an addiction. Like it's not like, oh, well, I was an alcoholic, or I am. Like it's that's a part of who you are, and that is going to be continued on. Like you had it. Yes, it's in the past. You've seen that hump. You've gotten over that, but it's still something that you're never going to forget and not going to be aware of, and something that you will be mindful of. And also the tools that you learned during that time in your life can be applicable to, God forbid, any other hard times, right? Any other things that are going on. So it's, I think, honoring it in a way instead of trying to just push it down and act like it's 6 feet under. You know what I mean?
I do, exactly. And I get loud about it now because I don't want any mom to feel like they're alone.
Yeah.
It would be naive of me to think I'm the only one that's ever experienced something like this.
Yeah.
And it was so hard for just me. Like, no. There are millions of women that are living with postpartum depression, anxiety, perinatal, men that are dealing with postpartum. Like, there's a lot of people dealing with this because of, you know, societal pressures. I guess if I had to pick one thing, like societal pressures and you know, just daily life being stressful in 2023 for you know, different factors. It's out there and it exists, and I think that it would be, personally, I think that it would be selfish of me to keep my mouth shut and pretend like it didn't happen. I think I owe it to, you know, not only myself to speak up, to, you know, be proud of how far I've come, but also I think I owe it to everybody else that's struggling with it to just say, hey, like, you're not crazy.
Yeah. And, you know, obviously, of course, I can appreciate and acknowledge that people may be fearful of being triggered and kind of sent back, and so it's sort of out of sight, out of mind. And I do understand that, but I'm in the same understanding as you. As you know, I think it's almost irresponsible in a way, just because it's almost like that shame that you're talking about that we hold as women in general, and then especially women as mothers. And so it's so almost second nature to just be like, okay, I'm gonna wipe my hands of it and move on. But then that's exactly what's happening. That's perpetuating the cycle of women being afraid to speak up, being uneducated on the topic because they didn't know that their friends, family members also went through it too, because it's not being talked about enough. So I think like the best thing you could do for yourself is acknowledge it, but also for other people, acknowledge it. I think that it will bring positive outcomes tenfold if you continue it forward with you.